Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be. Welcome to Zeisel's Tech Talk. My name is Tri Nguyen. I am the product manager and market development manager here at Zeisel North America, and good to have you here. I see, Martin, you're online. Looking forward to seeing you next week. So we'll touch base there as well. So good to see you online. I like to make this interactive as well. So if you'd like to ask any questions, please use the Q&A section and I will get to them as I can. And today we're going to be talking about some security updates. So the security product lines and the updates to the UOS 1.37 that just released at the end of January, and talk about kind of the future roadmap for the product as well. So thank you for being a partner with us. If you're not a partner, we have some information for you at the end on how to sign up and become a registered Zeisel approved partner. Quick introduction of the company before we get started into the main content, but I like to go through this because it's very important to me and to the company. I've been here now going on 22 years in May, so at Zeisel, but we've been in business over 35 years, 100 million devices making connections worldwide, over 700 employees worldwide serving in 150 markets, and over 1 million businesses use our solutions today. We are a channel-based company, so we, on the Zeisel network side, work with you, with our channel account managers, David, Andy, and Jacob, who service the entire North America segment here. And wherever you are, they're your proponent. So they are here to help you from pre-sales, post-sales, tech support, getting people online, or even getting a systems engineer online to help you facilitate kind of an application you're deploying with your customer. And we're here to help facilitate that, even with the distribution side. If you're looking for stock, you're looking for special pricing, all of that, we're here to take care of you. So please utilize them as your main resource in your day-to-day. So Nebula is very important in this whole process, even on the security side of the business. So it's quite important to kind of step back and look at why is Nebula one of those main differentiating functions that kind of glue together all these network pieces, because you can set up without unboxing. Wireless LAN access points, switches, firewall gateways, all can be onboarded and provisioned without even taking it out of the box. So you just scan the QR code on the app, or you enter that into the Nebula system, and you can get running in minutes. It just, once the device gets connectivity to the internet, it dials home. It says, hey, it belongs to that customer account, pulls down configuration, pulls down the latest firmware, and then you have access to fully control that and configure it beyond that if you want, or to troubleshoot. And it gives you information and access anytime, anywhere you have a browser, anywhere you have a connectivity. So even using a mobile device, you have access to the Nebula Control Center. It gives you full access to all those things that you would normally need to configure or to troubleshoot while you're sitting on a beach or something. Be able to really remote take care of any of your customers through this system. And from a security perspective, that's very important as well, because you never know when you might have some issue that you have to log into and find a way. You don't have to build back doors. You don't have to open up ports. So from a security mindset, it's very secure in that regard. And it's made for MSPs, ISPs, and even the end user like IT folk in mind. You can set up multiple organizations to manage multiple customers. Under each customer, you can have then multiple sites or multiple segments within that site. However you want to do that to segment out that network, you can manage that. It will allow for you to do cloud backup, restore, cloning devices, and configurations. And some of the features that we've just added to the security side allows for you to now clone security products across different organizations and such, if you have the MSP pack, or within the different sites. So it helps to make it easy for you to create these templates and profiles to speed up that deployment, especially if you're doing things over and over again. Now, scalability, if you only have one site or your customer is just managing one network, it may not be as advantageous, but it is still helpful. Imagine still being able to deploy 100 access points by just turning them on. So they're just injected with PoE power. Now all those APs are now online once they call home, as long as they have internet connectivity. And our platform now serves over 1 million devices with customers with thousands of different organizations and sites. Hassle-free update and patching. That's also a critical piece for security, making sure that your firmware is up to date. Any of the critical patches that might have been implemented are automatically updated. Again, if you're only managing one device, doing an upgrade is not such a big deal. You could just do that manually if you want, but imagine you as an MSP customer and you're managing hundreds or thousands of devices and want to get that to be upgraded and to the latest patches very quickly and easily, or even automated on a certain scheduled time that works best for you and your customers. That can also be done too. And just so you can feel more assured, we have implemented now many kind of gating things to ensure that the updates and the patches that go out are that won't cause any problems, in terms of any issues with the firmware or it freezing up devices and things like that. We are setting it up. We have a system that the devices are upgraded within a batch within our own systems first before they get pushed out into the public side. So there's kind of a security stop gap there to ensure that a safety net, I would say, that helps to ensure that the quality of the firmware that goes out doesn't cause any problems to our customers and to your customers as well. Making connections like VPN, ensuring that VPN site to site is easy to set up, as well as client remote office workers, laptops with scripts that can build VPN tunnels back to the head end of the office side, making it super easy through the cloud interface. It allows for you to do that through the Nebula. It's also AI-driven security because now it's in the cloud. It's also working with other AI powered cybersecurity providers and some partners of ours that provide us with their tools and their expertise integrated into our products, making sure that the world's threats are always constantly updated, making sure that your devices are up to speed as best as these companies are creating those catches as well. So we constantly work to protect you against the latest threats, even minutes after an outbreak. And Nebula supports over 130 different devices, not only security appliances, but all the way up to switches and wireless access points as well, managed under a single platform. So it gives you that one place for the entire small business network or enterprise business deployment. And Zycel, from a security standpoint, we're proud to be a CVE numbering authority. So it allows for us to, when there are reported vulnerabilities or potential threats that are out there that is affecting the device itself, we as a networking company, we actually have the authority to release the CVE numbers that you typically see when a lot of providers provide that, and we then have to provide, obviously we have to respond, and we also have to provide a mitigation path, and which may include firmware updates or changing configurations. So we use this to ensure that our partners are notified and kept up to speed when any of these kinds of things happen. I would suggest also there is you might want to reach out to your sales rep. There is a special kind of email newsletter notification that you might want to make sure that you don't have blacklisted or that goes to spam or anything like that. Make sure that it's open so that we can help to communicate, because there's a lot of times when before the public is released with the information, we give our partners a little bit of a head start. Once there is a firmware or a fix that's available, we give our partners a heads up on how it can be fixed or when it's coming, so that you guys can take care of it before it becomes a big any kind of news, because we will be releasing it as a kind of a news a press release on the fix once it's available. So if you want to get that head start, again, please reach out to our sales account managers there so they can get you to our marketing, which then tells you which email. I can't remember which email it comes from, but make sure that that's not in the spam or anything like that. So it again helps us to notify you. We are also working on a site that kind of gives you a dashboard of the threats and things that might be coming up to inform you better as well. So today we're going to be talking about it's just a handful of the key features that come with this new firmware in that 1.37 from the US. So UOS is our operating system for the USG Flex H series. So just to keep, just to so later on I'll talk about the models in a sense, but with the H series, that's our platform moving forward. You may have a USG Flex today, a legacy USG Flex with or an ATP product. Those are still good. We still are doing firmware related kind of upgrades, maybe not drastic feature upgrades on those, but that will probably continue for another year in terms of the feature functions. But from a security standpoint, if there are vulnerabilities, if any of the UTM services on a USG Flex or an ATP is affected by something, we will fix that and we will continue the services into, I think it's currently at October 2029 or 2030. So in the next 4 years from now is when you would have to ultimately upgrade. So you do have some time. If you do have customers still under contract, it will still service a 3-year contract there. But you might want to start, if you haven't jumped into the H series models, you might have to start to look into that to plan out, what your path and upgrade path for your customers may be to get to the H series. Now, of course, in 3, 4, 5 years time, I can't say if there might be another H series model that is coming out that would not replace, but be an enhancement to a faster speed type thing for the current H series. So keep that in mind. The cycle of any product is typically 5 to 6 years in terms of from the security standpoint. But we'll try to keep it as long as possible because we want to make sure that your customers are not disrupted. But a lot of times the technology changes, the hardware changes, and so we're forced to move there. But we want to cover just a few of the features that are coming and that are part of that new firmware upgrade that came out 1.37. So you're better informed of what's available that you might use. Maybe you don't use it at all, but this could be something you're considering. And then some additional items and enhancements that I won't be talking about, but they're just enhancements that came with the firmware. So the ones I'm going to be talking about today in a little more detail is application-aware policy routes, policy route to an IPsec, dynamic tunnel, captive portal, SSL VPN support for Google and Entra ID users, so the Microsoft Entra ID, org-wide MSP replicating from sites. So that's another key feature benefit that comes out in this UOS. Some additional items that were there we're not going to talk about, but we did enhance VPN security. So it now has IKE v2 AES GCM support, and then simplified network discovery with MDNS proxy. So it can discover other kind of devices that are there. So then that one specifically is a multicast DNS proxy. It supports it enables seamless service discovery across VLANs and subnets. So it allows Apple devices, Chromecast, and other MDNS enabled devices to communicate throughout your network. So it helps with that discovery there. And then from the enhanced IKE v2, that supports IKE v2 with AES GCM. That's encryption for both site-to-site and remote access connections. So that gives you better performance and authenticated encryption for that kind of VPN communication. Some additional enhancements, which are for the standalone. Remember, in the H series, even though there is cloud syncing now, meaning that any configurations on the device that you configure is synced to the cloud. So the configuration is in the cloud, but there are certain features that you can only configure in the GUI interface on the device itself until we find a demand or request that those kinds of features need to be put into the Nebula Cloud for everyday use. A lot of these things aren't there, not really when you want to use it for like day to day. It's a priority thing. So if any of these features you feel like, hey, I do this all the time, I want it as part of Nebula in that GUI, then we'll have to put that on the priority list to consider. But things like interface rate limiting that configures the ingress and egress bandwidth limits per interface, so it gives you better control on your traffic. The 802.1 PQoS marking, it gives you bandwidth management with that priority tagging for layer 2 QoS. The DHCP table import, that is DHCP, it lets you bulk import DHCP reservations. So if you do have some networks where you said, hey, all of these IPs I want to reserve for these devices on the network, then you can import that all in bulk. The dark mode is just a theme, so it just puts it in instead of the white background, it's going to be dark mode. So again, see, that's something that you don't necessarily need to have like in Nebula because you're going to be on the device, so you want to see it in dark mode. Nebula itself has a dark mode as well, so it doesn't matter in that particular case. APC per radio setting, so you can configure wireless radio parameters individually for each access point. So the AP controller on the device, so remember too, the USGs can function as a wireless controller if you're not using Nebula. In some cases, you want to do that for like a tunnel type mode or a configuring of just the local devices without having to use it in the Nebula Cloud. So that's the APC. And then the APC top traffic, it identifies highest bandwidth consumers across your wireless network and it gives you that analysis there. And then wireless diagnostics, things like built-in packet capture, diagnostic tools, and troubleshooting with wireless. Now, Nebula already has some of that already, but again, it's part of that AP controller system that lets you manage those APs on that local network. So those are supported in there. Just as a reminder too, in this asterisk here, it just means that the captive portal function as an enter ID users, that's on the local GUI right now in this phase. So again, this is one of those features that we want to get it out for customers to use. So we have it available. You can configure it on the device. And eventually in the next iterations of Nebula, it will be pushed into the Nebula platform. Let's see, Rowan asks, any plans to add statistic monitoring for wireless LAN interfaces in UOS? We recently had a scenario which a client complained about page load times or outright failures, so which turned out to be overlaps between IPS, packet loss. We didn't know until the ISP notified customers of an issue in that region. Historically, packet loss and latency statistics would have been really helpful in that troubleshooting process. I think if Rowan, if you give us kind of that example and you open up a case with our support so they can document kind of what you saw, what you were missing. We're always working with partners to try to enhance things. So whether it's in this wireless diagnostic piece or it is somewhere else, or they're implementing in within Nebula to grab that information, that might be helpful for us to kind of look and talk to our engineers and to our R&D to say, hey, is that something we're already implemented? Where do we find it? Or do we need to put this on the priority list? So yeah, definitely reach out to us. So diving into the application aware policy rule. So before you could do it by like IP addresses, but it couldn't tell by application. So again, you need application scanning here. And most people who are using our USG product lines have app patrol type functions turned on. So it can recognize things like Teams. It can recognize things like people using different apps and things like that, so that it can prioritize, it can block it, but they can also route things around. And so in the case where you might have multiple WANs and you want to make sure that conference applications and stuff stay there unless there is actually a failover to route down specific WAN interfaces. You couldn't do it by IP address because obviously the IPs can change or they don't stay the same. So you have to recognize them by application. So now we have app-aware policy in the routes, so you can put that within there. So things like Teams, like I mentioned, or conference applications, or less critical web traffic ports. You can say, hey, web traffic go on out WAN 2, Teams go out WAN 1, and it could still load balance and fail over. So if WAN 1 goes down, the policy can automatically shift to WAN 2. So, we've had instances of that kind of case where it wouldn't, it was trying to go down both paths, and then it would cause Teams to not detect, or you would have like no audio and things like that. So this helps to solve that. And in the local interface, if you went into the device, again, when I just want to reiterate, again, that the local user interface will be synced with the cloud, even if the configuration doesn't exist in the cloud, meaning that even though the GUI in the cloud doesn't show it, it will still sync that. So the benefit of it is now you can go to the user interface on the device to make changes, and it will automatically sync itself to the cloud so that when you go to the cloud, you know that it's there, or you can configure that feature if it's part of that cloud. So they're all one and the same. You no longer have in the USG Flex or the ATPs where you had to choose, do you want standalone or do you want cloud, right? So it was two different configurations. With the H series now, they're the same configuration, or at least they are the synced one configuration. So in the local user interface, you just go to networking routing and they'll go to the policy route, and then you can decide now and choose different applications in what to push down that policy. So you can enable that. You can say, okay, these types of users, or even that kind of connectivity or interface, that's what it's going to service there. And then on the Nebula side, there's also now a service port for applications. So then you can drop down that. And in that drop down, there's going to be a bunch of options, the different applications that it can detect. So, you can see like Facebook apps, Facebook games. So you can be very granular, or you can say all of Facebook, right? So it's very helpful in that. It could be overwhelming, but again, if you want to just set it up, initially, then you can use that kind of as your base configuration for later on. And that's kind of the role of kind of that cloning function that you'll see in just a bit. The second case or the second one that we want to talk about is the policy route to IPsec. So the server role for a dynamic tunnel. So this might be a little bit confusing. You might not even be using dynamic tunnels, but some people do, where they have routers, and originally you normally have like a dynamic public IPs, and you have different IP address spaces, right? Like a 10 dot network. So the main one is a 10.1. One of the sites is 10.2, and you have 10.3 and 10.4. With the policy route now, you can also set up that as a default. So you can accept on the phase 2 policy on the hub as I will accept anything from the local IP that's a /24, any IP address. So it allows for you to just have a kind of a universal. That's how we create a dynamic tunnel. So as long as the tunnel is coming in on one of those 10.2s, it will accept that IP address space, and then work with that to to implement across that tunnel. So again, just so you can trunk traffic through back into that network. So again, just how you would build just that VPN tunnel, be able to do it by policy route. So then you can say, hey, these policies on the phase 2 policy, it's going to allow for you to get those accept those IP addresses. So those source addresses and any hop, the server role tunnel there. So to configure that policy route in the local interface, you go to networking routing, again, policy route, and then you can create these the type tunnels, and then do a security policy on those devices as well. On those network, on those VPN tunnels. And then on the Nebula side, you also go to the configure side. Configure. I think it's in the configure for the VPN part of it. But inside the VPN, when you're building those object tunnels, then you can say to the next hop, you can say, well, VPN tunnel, it's going to have this hop policy. Where does it go? So you can say, well, this kind of traffic, it can go, is only traffic that goes to the main hub. So instead of doing a full tunnel mode where you say, well, all traffic in the VPN goes through, you can do that as well. But then you can say, well, these applications or these types of IP addresses, maybe you only want the sales team IP space or the subnet to go and traverse into the tunnel versus anybody who's on the network can go through the tunnel. So you can create these policies, or you can say, even from secure standpoint, only these users can go across the tunnel. Again, it just allows for you to do that policy route. Before, it wouldn't work. I think from a dynamic tunnel standpoint, you had to create like kind of a one-to-one mapping, and you couldn't just create a universal dynamic tunnel, a dynamic tunnel at the head end, and so you had to do very direct. It became very complicated when you have more than one VPN location there. For captive portal, and SSL VPN support. So that captive portal for people to go to, they're trying to connect their SSL VPN. It usually redirects them into a web page. We are working. There have been reports that how do we change the SSL VPN captive portal port? Because right now I believe it uses the 443, which could be, which then could also be used to get to the GUI interface on the WAN side. All you have to do is create a policy rule to ensure that people can get to the WAN side interface, the GUI. So just make sure you have that policy. I think by default it's turned off because it's only allowing most of the time on the LAN side access to it. But when you try to build that VPN tunnel, there is a captive portal that you would go to. Maybe it's like sslvpn.zicel.com, for example, for if you're going to make it for your company. And it brings up a captive portal, and you can use that to log in or to do authentication. And so now it supports Microsoft Entra ID and Google accounts there. So they go to the portal. Let me go back. They go to the portal, and then it does the authentication. It checks with the Google side or the Microsoft side, and then it builds the VPN connectivity as needed to the client, so they can get to the device or wherever that policy is allowing for them to go. So the authentication flow and how that works. There's some boring stuff, but some details in case you wanted to know. User makes a request, so they try to access the captive portal there. Then they are redirected to the identity provider, and then the user is then authenticated by wherever that is. Again, Microsoft Entra ID or the Google ID. They can obtain the authentication token, and then the gateway token is validated, and then they are granted access. So they can do this either for access to the internet or access to other services in that local internet. But this is also implemented so they can get kind of captive portal for internet access, I guess you can say. So if there's if you require the user or guest to log in before they get internet connectivity, then it hops him through similar to a captive portal, like when you're at a coffee shop or at a hotel. And it authenticates, though, based on the Google Entra ID or the Google ID or the Microsoft Entra ID. So it depends on how you do your structure there. Of course, it could still work with other authentication methods, even local authentication, or if you have a Nebula account, the Nebula account has authenticated users. You can use that as well to do the authentication for this internet access. But we're just featuring that now we support the Microsoft Entra ID and the Google IDP there for this function. And then the last one we're going to be talking about from a feature perspective from this product release is the org-wide MSP replicate function. So it helps you to replicate with the MSP license, something very cool. You can do it by just the org. So within the org, you can then you can make templates, create new new sites with configurations for your, let's say, H series model. So you can create a template org, I would say, and create them as like a here's your standard USG Flex 50H template, your locked down 100H template and 200H template. And then when there are new organizations or new sites in that let's say retail customer, and they want to deploy 200H, so you can just duplicate that and replicate that to the new the new site, and then you can make any minor changes, maybe to the SSID, the name of the device, the locations, things like that, and then you're ready to go. Now with the MSP license, so when you do have access to that license, you can then do cross-org configuration templates as well. So that's where I would see the biggest benefit. You as an MSP, you would create a template org. So create kind of any kind of scenarios you want, or maybe multiple orgs. Maybe this org is for typical dental offices that you need to lock down with HIPAA compliancy, PCI compliancy, because they're doing credit card processing and these kinds of SSIDs, et cetera. Um, these kinds of content filtering profiles to block social media, things like that. You create that template and say, hey, every time now we get a new dental office and they use this 200H, we'll duplicate it over to the next, to that new customer. And now it'll inherit that configuration template. And then again, you just make some minor changes and then you're ready to go. And that's done at the MSP license level in Nebula. So you have to have that MSP license on the account that you wish to do this. Not every account requires you to have the MSP license. The regular admins can all access all of these orgs, but only the MSP license lets you do kind of that cross org configuration type stuff. So at least you have one account that can do it, and then the regular accounts for your admins, they can still manage those orgs, individually and together under their view anyways. It's just this function that lets you do that cross management. And so it's ideal for chain stores or environments, or like if you have typical customers. We have some MSPs that are very focused. They only do dental offices, and that's who they cater to. Those are their customers. That's their expertise, and that's all they sell. So they will sell these firewalls like all day long, and they may have like a configuration template file that they use, and then they upload it to the device, and then it's has that baseline. So this is in effect the same thing, but managed in the cloud. So you technically could upload the firmware to the device, to the H series, put it in Nebula, so then you have a clone, save that device template as a clone, and then use that now from then on to clone other devices that are your customers. So just so you know as well, this replication did not exist on the H series in the 19.30 release of Nebula. So you have to use the later or the current version of Nebula in order for it to show up there. But you do go into the configuration management there, and you can do replicate site-wide configurations within Nebula. So you can go in and you can see which one's the source site, and it's going to go to which what you want to replicate and where to push that configuration. So before it didn't have that. So now if you have 19.30 on the Nebula side on the devices, it will support that. So again, that was released on January 19th this year. So it gives you then the full site, full H series support. So you now, before in the previous view, you can see that the security piece was kind of grayed out because it didn't have that full site support. But now you can replicate just the security appliance, or you can do a full site. So if you have access point switches and site settings and the security appliance that you are used as a template, then you can say, hey, every new doctor's office or dental office now, we clone it. And you just have to put APs, switches, and firewalls into there that have the same feature support, and it will then take that configuration when it goes online. So again, it just makes it super easy, super fast. On top of the configuration templates that you can create, like kind of outside of that, where it can create certain pieces of configuration that you can duplicate or implement into the different devices as you feel fit. But this one lets you do a whole, site clone. So the entire firewall's configuration is getting cloned to the other devices. So again, make sure you use it wisely, just so that you don't accidentally clone like a running, I guess you could, but a running customer's configuration over, and then potentially, cause some issues from a VPN standpoint because they have the same VPN settings and things like that. So just keep that in mind as you do that. The MSP view, you can also do that replication as well. And you can replicate and move the site. So you can do site replications from the source organization and what scope into what, destination. So source destination, destination org. So the source orgs and then the destination orgs. So to give you a preview of what's coming, we already released the January stuff that I was talking about, like the application aware policies, the captive portals, and then updates that we did to the NCC portal. And some of these, again, the on-prem may or may not have the NCC portal. Remember, there's kind of that there could be a potential lag between when the feature is available, where we make it public, and then when it is configurable on the Nebula side. So in this case, though, things like application aware policy, we're able to put it on the device itself. So it's a working feature, as well as being able to configure it in the Nebula Cloud, right? So most of the time we try to get to that, but there might be some features that are, I would say, maybe specialized or not really highly used very often. That might not be in the Nebula platform yet, and it might come at a later date, or if at all. So like something like protocol anomaly detection, that may not show up in a Nebula configuration for some time, if potentially, or if at all, because people aren't needing it or requesting it, some things like that. But it might be on the plans for future releases. So we do have kind of this this rhythm where we have a January, an April, a July, and October type release time schedule. And the major ones typically are in kind of that April timeframe, but sometimes it could be sooner, like in the January release. But we try to have that so that we can have kind of constant new features. We want to fix features, obviously, and fix vulnerabilities and patches and bugs. That's also included in these, but aren't talked about. They're in the release notes and such, but not they're not like new enhancements like the ones I've been talking about. But in April, we do have plans for, and again, these are subject to change. The April one is more likely because it is something that has been worked on. There could be some, depending on resources. That's why some of the summary reports and NCC client reserved DHCP table information. That's kind of like, if we can fit it in, we will try to get it in. If not, it's going to get pushed back for some of those. If some of these other features don't get in. But let's see, on April, IPv6 dual stack on peer routing, multiple profile for remote VPN, so SSL VPN. People have asked for that. And then something that's kind of interesting as well is the AI DLP partnership with Heartbot, and we'll give you some more information on that. But just think about today's world with all of the AI sites that are there, and the potential risk of uploading your employees or even customers uploading to those AIs on the free platform data or information that might be sensitive to the company, right? So just imagine somebody uploading sales data to one of the AIs to help them to analyze that sales data, but not realizing that that data is also getting eaten up and learned by that through the free service as part of the payment, I guess, to that service. So using something like Heartbot that we partner with will allow for you to have control over that and be able to use the firewall to help block, mitigate, control what information could be potentially sent, and be basically kind of like a firewall to AI. So that's kind of what's coming there. License migration on NCC portal. So this is going to be a great piece here for any customers of yours that are on like the ATP, USG Flex, and want to get to the H series. Right now, if you had 6 months left of licenses on those older devices, you had to work with tech support, which then had to work with our R&D side, our support in our headquarters, to help to manually migrate that license to the new product. But now through Nebula, you're going to be able to manage that license migration on your own. So in a sense, you're going to get to say, this one's going to go off. It's no longer going to be used. So we want to transfer these licenses, this UTM license, over to the new H series and the equivalent model that it's migrating to. Now, there could be some cases where you're trying to upgrade to a higher end model, and we'll have to figure out, how does that prorate and that kind of stuff that might come involved, or it might have to be a manual thing that happens on that side when you're going from not like to like models. Captive portal with external portal redirect with radius included, and then support for also cloud authentication for the captive portal, and then multiple profiles for the VPN is going to be on the Nebula side. So again, you can see it's supported on the standalone, and the multiple profile is also configurable in the Nebula side. We're adding CDR configuration, which is already supported in our products, collaborative defense response. So that interacts with our APs to give you kind of edge security protection. So that's kind of a preview of what's coming up on the new H series UOS. From a hardware perspective, the USG Lite, also the 60AX has also gotten a release at the end of January as well. The main one is that it now does dual WAN load balancing and policy routes, as well as so really the focus on it is to give you a small business, entry level basic firewall that does some security and gives you dual WAN load balancing functions as well. For the SCR, if you're using it at SCR, currently that model is only on vulnerability maintenance support. So we aren't going to enhance any features. So this feature set is still what it is, and you can continue to use that as is. One differentiator between these two is that the USG Lite 60AX supports meshing with our business class access points. So if you're looking to do a mesh node wirelessly, then it can mesh directly to this device. The secure reporter roadmap looks like this. We're just going to be enhancing some of the MSP reporting and org-wide reporter, and then the AI alert functionalities to do some anomaly insights with the smart summary reports coming out in June. So some stuff coming up in April and June for the secure reporter roadmap there. So it's going to be part of the UOS 1.38 release that we have in that second quarter there. And then for the legacy USG Flex ATPs, support connectivity policy route is what was released recently. There's also some vulnerability and some fixes that are coming out in a couple of days to address some of the reported issues that have popped up. So that's where that vulnerability patch and accumulated IT bug fixes are coming out in a couple of days, both for on the Nebula side of things and the on-prem device as well. So just keep an eye on that. And USG 60AX, like I mentioned before, it's a Wi-Fi 6 with dual 2.5 gig WAN LAN ports. So again, you can load, balance, and failover now. It's also subscription free. It can do ransomware prevention, but if you do want 0-day protection as well as content filtering, then you can upgrade to the entry defense pack, the elite pack that gives you those functions. It also does VPN and also manageable in our Nebula Cloud platform. So the security packs that you get with you can get with the different devices is like the H series comes with entry defense, even on the non-bundled version. So the hardware only is no longer a hardware only. It is hardware plus entry defense. And then you can upgrade the H series to the gold pack, which is the full feature set, full UTM, sandboxing, IP, DNS, reputation filtering, content filtering, malware protection, all of the above is the gold pack. With the USG 60 Lite, you can add on the elite pack, gives you premium ransomware prevention and content filtering, the web filtering, as well as Nebula Pro. So it's a good value there for the elite pack. And then the connect and protect, if you're going to add some functions for the CDR and the CNP to the APs, you can add on some endpoint AP point security functionality scanning, like DNS scanning, etc. So with the gold pack, it gives you advanced management protection, sandboxing, like I mentioned. So the difference between the entry pack um, and the gold pack, obviously you get a lot more functionality. And anybody who does security, you have to go with the gold pack. This one is like there for in case somebody just really needs a firewall and doesn't really care about security, or they have something else that does all of their security in the cloud or something like that. But you would still, I would still highly recommend to get the gold pack for that service because it gives you kind of everything. And then the H series has that cloud and on-prem sync that I mentioned earlier, where the two configurations are the same. They're just synced across. So whether you make a change on the cloud or you make the change on the device, it will all be synced together. And all of our H series models, we use the best in cybersecurity experts to give us these different functionalities in our device. So again, we're not trying to build it ourselves. We're using these companies' expertise in those areas to give us the functionality and to stay up to date with all those latest threats. So the USG 50H that was recently launched as well. And if you were using our USG Flex 50s before, they only had content filtering and anti-spam. You couldn't use it for full UTM. But now the USG Flex H series gives you that entry-level full UTM. So if you're looking for the most cost-effective UTM device for your small customers, high performance SPI firewall and UTM firewall, this is what's probably rated for anybody who has like a 300 meg. It's a 600 meg UTM, but I would say it's great for like 300, 350 megabits with full UTM turned on. But it does all of the same UTM functions as your 100Hs and above. So that's a benefit that you might want to take a look at. And of course, our flagship model is our USG Flex 700H. Gives you 15 gigs of SPI firewall, 4 gigs of full UTM, which is good for like I would say 2.5 gig, realistically 2.5 gig WAN. So that's for this model, which is our flagship model. And then we use AI to do some cybersecurity intelligence detections with our SecU reporter and AI SecU pilot, and it looks and monitors those threats, and then also identify abnormal user behaviors. And the benefit of this one is really good. The fact that people, you might have your customers. I mean, maybe raise of hands. How many of your customers you're trying to sell them security, network security, and they say, "Well, why do I need network security? I don't want to pay $100 a month. I don't want to pay anything. I don't know what it's doing." Right? Martin has that problem. So the beauty of the reporting lets you showcase to the customer even before they buy, because we do have 30-day free trials on our security services. Enable that 30 days, enable the reporting, and then at the end of the month, show them the report that says, "Hey, look, your device, we've now blocked 450 ransomware attacks. Did you know that so-and-so has been downloading illegal things on your network and consuming 50 gigs of bandwidth a month? These are your top websites that your employees are going to. Do you want to block them?" At the end of the day, at the end of that month, most people will then see this is worth something. So you can say, "Well, I can not renew it and you'll get this kind of influx of potential threats, or do you want us to take care of that and renew it?" Seth does ask, how does the customer actually see 2 gigabits on the 50H if there aren't 2.5? So it's a net. So multiple sessions, multiple ports. So the throughput of the device, even though it says like 2 gig SPI firewall, that's still not the realistic number. It's still the theoretical max, because that's using industry standard max packet sizes to see what is its kind of breaking point. I always have to take about 50% off of that. 50 to 60% of any number is probably your more realistic throughput that you would see on a day-to-day basis. So even on that 2 gig firewall, that's if it was tested with multiple ports, because it is trying to test its processing limits. But even on realistic, it would still do 1 gig, even though because it has the 1 gig ports, but it can then do 1 gig of that firewall. But from a UTM standpoint, the 50Hs only have a 600 megabit throughput rating for if you enable IDP antivirus protection because it's doing layer 7 scanning. It's the worst, the most CPU intensive, and so it's the worst case scenario. And that one is at 600 megabits per second. So I always say, well, again, 50 to 60% of that number. So it's probably rated best for your customers who have a 300 megabit per second WAN connection. It will still communicate gigabit within the local network, and then you're not typically scanning from like LAN to LAN, devices per se, unless there's certain segments that you want to do that. But again, keep that in mind. If you are scanning LAN to LAN from port 1 to port 2, because they're different segments with viruses and antivirus, then it also adds to the depreciation of that because it costs processing power. It's going to affect the overall throughput of the device. So keep that in mind as you're building the networks and making sure you have the right size. And because we do have a wide range, again, these numbers like the 3 gigabits, UTM throughput, that's good for like a 1.5, gig or a little higher total throughput of WAN connectivity. Even though it does have those additional 2.5 gig ports, it's not going to push you 2.5 through the WAN because it's probably going to be more than if you do full UTM turned on. But it will do 2.5 within the kind of the local network there. And security licenses, again, obviously important. I'm not going to go down each one of these. I did have a webinar that did talk about kind of these in a little bit more details on why you want these services. But in general, you do want that full protection. If you're going to buy a network security appliance and you're trying to enforce it into a customer, then it's good for you to make sure that you have kind of the full suite of protection. And licensed versus unlicensed, again, it's just another way to look at it. When you do buy the license bundle, you do get a lot of functionality and feature and protection. And it's great for a small office, for teleworkers, for home offices, retail stores, retail shops. A lot of those small ones, or you can use them in larger offices, so the 200, the 500, 700, or to build connectivity between branch offices and multiple retail stores, et cetera, communicating back into a single location. So similar to that. And like I mentioned earlier, the Essential Pack now comes with the base H series models. So we already give you now then just DNS threat protection, some URL threat protection, and IP reputation. And then you also get some monitoring, cybersecurity monitoring within the Secu Reporter, visibility, and some log retention there for that service. And then the new Nebula, the dynamic DNS service that's available too as well. We do have an automated configuration migration tool that we continue to enhance. So if you do find that the tool is missing something, or maybe the resulting migration configuration is lacking something, or it's not converting something correctly, let us know so that we can see if we can enhance that and fix that. So it allows for you to go from like a USG Flex to a USG Flex H, or an ATP to an H series equivalent model. But you could use it to kind of go through a path as well for like an older generation USG to get to the USG model, then from the USG to the USG Flex, and then USG Flex to the H. So you can kind of follow a path if you need to do that, but just make sure though that the firmware that you would need has to be on a certain firmware on some of these devices in order for you to get to that for it to convert correctly. We also wanted to inform you on our commitment to security, and when we announce anything that is like end of sale, meaning that we no longer have like stock and we're not selling that anymore, there's still going to be a 2-year development cycle. So there will be any kind of features, enhancements, of course, critical issues and stuff that's always going to be fixed in that time frame. But then end of vulnerability. So anything that affects security related licenses is 5 years later. So 2 years of kind of new features and such. But then security vulnerabilities, anything that affects the security licenses or the functions of those security licenses, we're gonna commit to support that from 5 years after. And then after that 5 years is going to be the official kind of end of life, meaning that the signatures will no longer be updated, firmwares will stop, patches and such. So you'll be notified 2 years in advance and 1 year in advance of that end of life, because the services will stop functioning, or it'll be the last time you can add another 1 year license, and then you'll be told that. Um, Frank says it would be nice to be able to convert between 50 or 100 to or 100 to 200. That's something that we're talking about too, but the challenge is sometimes, Frank, is that the interfaces are different between kind of the 50 and the 100, or the mapping of the interfaces between the 100s and the 200s could be different. But we could take that to the report. If you are finding yourself having to do that, that is something that I did request. Part of the benefit of being on the H series now, though, the H series configuration is more universal, so that in the future, maybe not from the uh, the previous generation to the H series, but next generation, so the H series model to the next H series, you can go and interchange from between the different ones. Now we can double check to see if the 100H can go to the 200H easily. I was told that the configuration is much more universal, that it could do that, but we need to double check when that is fully vetted and fully supported there. Thank you for that question. And also commitment to the licenses, right? Because the hardware support from a firmware standpoint and also the licenses are going to also match that. So the end of license registration is going to be that 4 years after the end of market date. So because we're only supporting the licenses to the 5th year after the end of life, before we say it's end of life, the last time you can register or add a 1 year license is 4 years prior to that date, right? So it makes sense. So this is kind of just both the hardware and the licenses. So just the big thing to keep in mind is when we announced end of sale, no longer have any stock, like I would say the ATPs are in this phase. The ATP series have basically a end of life date of probably October, I think it's 2029 or 2030. So in the next 3 to 4 years, you're going to have to move anybody who's on an ATP to whatever generation that it's out at that time. Either it be the H series or the next generation H series. So hopefully that will give you some time to plan out far enough in advance that even if you have a customer today on a 3-year contract, that will still be supported for the next 3 years, that you don't have to upgrade them to the next model yet. If you haven't joined our partner program, that's our ZAP program. We have bronze, silver, and gold. We want you to be in gold. And it only takes a qualifying sales in a 6-month period of 12K to be gold. So you can work through D&H, Ingram, TD Synnex, Wave, Target, and Blue Star to get your discounts. If you're not seeing your discounts, please reach out to your sales rep to make sure that it didn't fall off for some reason, or you haven't purchased something in a long time and it's not showing the right pricing. And then if you'd like to connect with us on LinkedIn, you can look us up at Zicel-US-channel, or on YouTube, Zicel America channel. If you want to connect with me, you can go to LinkedIn and just search for Zicel Tri. So ZYXELTRI, and you should be able to find me. We do have maybe 2 minutes left. If there's any other questions that you feel like you want to ask, or maybe you might have some questions later on, you can always email me at tri@zicel.com. Robert does have a question. Let's see. When will the Nebula mobile app support configuring and viewing the SSID on NCC when the AP grouping feature is enabled? That's a good question. I'll have to ask with our Nebula product manager. If that's something that you find, hey, I need that kind of support, it would be very helpful. Please reach out to your sales rep so that we can create a case and open that up. Or you can email me with that request so that I have it and I can push it along to our product manager for Nebula and see what kind of enhancement. And then, of course, if you have like an example of what you are kind of looking for, what viewing, how do you want to view the SSID? What kind of other information that might be there that you might need? So then we can document that and see if that's a request. So it says, great content, Tri. Thanks as always. Of course, my pleasure. Should we have to uninstall Secu Extender if subscription expires? Normally, no. The only thing that's kind of going to gate you for Secu Extender is if you were using a Secu extender for, let's say, Mac, and that Mac OS version no longer is supported, or like, or you upgraded to a newer version of the Mac OS, and that Secu extender doesn't work there anymore, then of course you're gonna have to get the latest versions for the IPsec and slash SSL VPN Secu extender. It's a single license now, and it works for both IPsec and SSL. But I would suggest for you to just go straight IPsec at that point, since the client already supports both IPsec and SSL. It's a lot more efficient and a lot faster to do IPsec. So it's already built into that client, so might as well use it. I know it might be convenient to just go to a login screen and you kind of like log into stuff and then it's there, but you can do that now pretty much with our IPsec client. And now that we also support Tailscale and also Open VPN, so you can use those services as well, not necessarily our client, but you can use that to make it more simplistic, I guess, from a login perspective, if you wanted to. Well, I think we just hit our 12 o'clock here in the Pacific time frame. So I guess that is it for me. I hope this content was beneficial to you and kind of opened up some potential opportunities with you. But then just to inform you of what's coming, we want to be able to do this more often. So I'll probably in the April timeframe have another webinar like this that talks about kind of the July release or the upcoming the April's content, what features are there, and then the July, what's upcoming in the July timeframe on a feature perspective. But hopefully this helps you. Again, encourage you to use the security licenses with your customers to showcase what the benefits are and help you to get that recurring revenue that everybody is looking for. So until next time, thank you for joining with us here at Zyxel, and look forward to seeing some of you, like Martin, next week, and seeing some of you at another event or at another webinar. So look forward to seeing you soon. Take care. Have a good rest of your day.